actually talk about this like server thing. Before we got into servers, we weren't persisting any data. And so check this out. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop. Nothing's gonna come up right now. I'm gonna break down this like file structure. Inside, I have a file called Pokemon.js. All right? I could easily reference Pokemon, but what I can do instead is, if you take a look at the README, what I can do is, I can fake a server, a fake development server, and all I want that server to do is host this data. So in order to do that, I can run a command called Json Server, and I can give it a flag of -- watch. All this does is it starts a JSON server and it watches a file called db.json. So if I run this, it will tell me, hey, you're done. I'm literally watching this server and I'm running it at localhost 3000/Pokemon. So if I were to, in fact, go to localhost 3000/Pokemon, what should I see? I'm going to see my data. There is a 1-for-1 correlation to all this as there is this. Cool? It's just hosting my file on a local server. Are there any questions on this? Can anyone guess why we'd want to do this? Big data? Yeah, right. So the reason behind this is simply that, the reason for that is just simply that if I actually want to make web requests, I need to be able to fake the fact that my data is being hosted. All right? I could tell that there's like this afternoon lunch slump, so I'm just going to keep moving, right? And what that means is, so I'm just going to do this one time. I'm not upset or anything. I just kind of like, so what that means is, it's okay, don't worry, don't be frightened. I just needed everyone's like attention, right? What that means is, I'm gonna move because I can tell that everyone's kind of like energy is low, like you ate, you're kind of full, you're in this like let me watch mode, and so like this call recall is not gonna work at 3 o'clock. I'm going to just lecture to you. It is 100% on you to ask questions. Is that clear? This is the only time I will require a response. Raise your hand if that is okay with you. Let's move on. Awesome. So I just started the server, which means that if I, in fact, make any requests on localhost 3000, I will actually get a response back. And that's all I'm doing. So you will start to see a lot of labs do this, and that is like your official explanation of it. Cool? Great. So all I'm doing is I'm running this fetch command, and invoking it here, and then I'm storing all Pokemon in an array. Then I'm running a function called show all Pokemon, right, with the data, right? Could I have done all Pokemon? Yes, I can. I'm just going to leave as data. It doesn't really matter. Show all Pokemon. What does this do? It will take the Pokemon container I grabbed earlier. It will ask for its inner HTML, which, if you look in the beginning, right, where it is, Pokemon container. Is there anything in there? No. Nope, there's nothing in there, right? So the inner HTML currently would be blank, and I'm just going to assign it, this function, Pokemons.map, passing in something called render single Pokemon, and then I'm joining. Interesting. All right, where's Pokemons? It's the array, and I'm mapping through it, passing in a callback function. So I can assume render single Pokemon is some sort of callback. Well, let's find it. Oh, there it is. What it does is it takes in one Pokemon at a time. And all it does is it takes that data and transforms it into a string. Something I want to make very clear, very, very, very clear. And that is if I return, right, it is expecting at least minimum 1 character. If I do this, it will return nothing. the rest of the code will break. Not break, it'll just return nothing. This will not execute because the return will break out of the function. So it's very important that you have at least one character. If, however, I did this, that would also be fine, but you need at least one character. Because then return knows that it started a string and this is what it is. I do that because it's easier to see the indentation, as I've harped on before, for debugging purposes. So, render single Pokemon will take a Pokemon and make a string template for me, something that Hamza went over, and that is I can create on the fly divs, h1s, and images. So with the Pokemon, I'm interpolating the ID. You've seen Hamza do this, so let's go back to that code. What this is doing is it's taking the Pokemon's array, an array of objects. What does map do? It does a one-for-one transformation. So I give it a Pokemon object and I receive back whatever this callback does. And this callback will, in fact, return HTML string. So what that means is, yeah?
Just to double check, when you do the inner HTML, indentation is really important for like the child-parent relationship.
To be perfectly honest with you, all of this, the indentation is only important for your own personal debugging. Like if all of this was just like one jarbled string, this will totally run. So I keep the indentation there because this is the indentation I'm imagining is going to be on the page so I can actually debug it because so I can easily see which one are children. But to answer your question specifically, because it's a string, it's irrelevant, space immaterial. Very good, thank you for asking. So, back.
Do you not need to pass the callback an argument?
No, because map, as we've demonstrated in the for each, inside the source code for map, it will call the callback with each individual item, right? And that individual item will be Pokemon in this case. So I have an array of Pokemon. It is calling this callback, which does that transformation. All this does is it transforms the Pokemon object, takes each one, makes it that HTML string, and it joins it on an empty string. I do this because how do I know the difference between item 1 and item 2 inside an array? What is the sexy little thing that's there? It's the comma. If I do not run this dot join, the commas still exist, right? Because map returns an array. If I do inner HTML on an array, and I add in that string template every single time, I will keep the commas in there. Matter of fact, let's do that. If I do not do this, the commas show up. If I get rid of them with the dot join, they're gone. Cool? And that's all that's doing there. I cannot write this code immediately off the bat. So what I told you earlier, I basically inside here literally created an anonymous function that did this. And then later on, I refactored it into a separate function so that I can pass it in a callback that makes sense. I have this Pokemon's array, and I am rendering a single Pokemon in HTML, and I'm going to join it. So do not try writing this off the bat. That's really the idea. I have an event listener here that listens for a click, and again, if that click anywhere inside the container, the tag name is an image. If anywhere inside here is an image, right? So if I click this, is that an image? If I click that, is that an image? If I click that, is that an image? No. Therefore, it will not do any of this. However, if it is an image tag, like this one, boop, 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 and it checks true that is in fact an image, then I need to find the Pokemon and I need to return the ID. I'm sorry, return that Pokemon. So that's how find works, sorry. I need to return that Pokemon. Then I will check the source. If it is front, I simply change the source to the back. Otherwise, make it the front. And that's basically the toggle, right? If it's the front, make it the back. Otherwise, make it the front, because there's kind of only two, right? Boop, 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 boop. Image, 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 not image, do nothing. Cool? So that's what this is doing. That being said, this is an event listener, a click in the Pokemon container. This is code that executes if this is true. Meaning, if I log the event, the E, right? Sorry, that didn't work. Right? If I log it, oop, will I get something even if I do not click an image? Yes, I do, right? So the event still fires, it just does nothing unless it hits the condition. Cool? So event delegation, event listeners, great. All right, now that that's sort of explained in terms of like how that code works, let's actually make some new functionality. What I want to do here is I built this form, right? I literally hard-coded it right inside the HTML, and it looks like this, right? Form, ID of new Pokemon form, and it goes to index.html, whatever, and it posts. Awesome. So what I would like to see is I want to put in a name, right? Like Hamza, and then a front image, some URL to the front, and then some URL to the back. And then I want to be able to create that Pokemon. That's what I want to be able to do. But notice, did you see that real quick? What happens to the form? Right, let's take a look at this network tab. Let's drop it back here. If I create, notice how it literally will send a full response, right? We talked about this, about forms, right? What does forms do by default? They submit something to a server, then the server comes back with a response. Why did it look like it refreshed? Does anyone know? Close. What it did was it posted to index.html. So I can take a look at not index.html and see if I hit create that Pokemon, it does this because guess where it brought me to? Not index.html. The reason it looked like a full page refresh is because guess what my file is called? Index.html. So when it actually did a post to index, it just served me back index.html, which would look like a refresh. But do not be fooled, the post does not actually refresh. It will submit a post and then return you some data. Cool? That's just the default action. Great. Boop, 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 boop. Great. So what we'd like to do is I want to create a new Pokemon. Right? The idea here is that I want to grab all the inputs and I want to listen to that form submit. Does that make sense? Like, in order to be able to fire off a post request using Ajax, I need the data from the form. And when should I fire that post request? Should I fire it when the user clicks Pokemon? Should I fire it when the user clicks Eradicate? I should fire it when the user clicks create that Pokemon. That's when that fetch should fire. So let's do that. First thing I would think makes sense to me is let's listen to the form. Let's listen for that form, right? So we'll do this instead. Boop, boop, boop. 1, 2. The order that you do it in kind of matters, and I'll explain here in a little bit. So how can I listen for the form? Well, I need to find the form first, right? I need to attach the listener to the form. That makes total sense. So let's go back to the index.html and see I have an ID here called new Pokemon form, money. Great. I'm simply going to const, right, new poke form equals to a document dot query. You almost thought I was going to do select element by ID. Nice try. Nice try. I almost did, actually. That's what I thought about it. So now I have the new Pokemon form, right? What's the smart thing to do? Test. Ah, that's so money. I like you guys a lot. I hope you like me. Can't do anything about that, but I hope. Cool. So I'm simply going to refresh, and then I see the form is in fact console logging, which is great. So that is great. That's what I want. And now, as we've discussed on this Pokemon form, I want to add an event listener. What should I be listening to as an event for the form? Smart class. Submit, right? Submit. And what do I want it to do? How can I tell it to do something? Right? I can either do function, right? But let's slowly introduce new things, right? I can do, instead, an arrow function. And all that looks like is the bananas. So instead of keyword function, I'll write both and then I'll transform it right before your very eyes, right? There's the keyword function. All I want to do is go boop, 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 and then go bloop, boop, and that's it. It's an arrow function now. Right? So not a very difficult transformation. I just wanted to write it in one line so you could see it. And now I'm going to do this. Cool. And so this is where the arguments go in. And remember the event listener, what does it always pass in as an argument to the callback? The event. Awesome. So I should probably console log the event just to see, just to test, just for funsies, right? Boom. Whoa. That was weird. It console logged and then it reloaded on me. It did some sort of full page reload. Let's get rid of that. Junk. Okay. Let's embarrass. Am I in JavaScript hell already? Did you see that? Oh, I didn't save. Oh, trash. Oh, I did. Huh.
You don't have the curly bracket.
Oh, I got rid of the curly bracket here. Oh, thank you. Wow. Remember how I told you I was good at it? Embarrassing. All right. Good deal. So now I should see, oh, great. The event is in fact logging, and I'm preventing the default. Awesome. Actually, just for fun, what is the event.target? Bloop. It's the form again. Interesting. Good to know. Good to know. All right. Now that we actually are preventing the form from submitting, we've gotten the form, what was the next thing that we promised ourselves that we would do? We would grab all the inputs, right? Sorry, I haven't looked up in a second, and that's totally my fault. Does anyone have any questions on just grabbing that form, console logging, that short feedback loop? Awesome, great. So now I'm going to grab the inputs, right? So what do the inputs look like? This input right here is new poke name, and then new poke front. Oh, damn, it's such a long name. Okay, great. Sorry. Great, let's do that. Bloop, const, right? Name? Pokemon name? Poke name? Bloop, 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 bloop. Equals to a doc. Can I do it on the document or should I do it on the form? Let's just grab it from the form. Dot query selector. All right, we could do that. Let's not overload the document, right? Bloop. And then bloop bloop. So what is it? Pokemon from the front. And then Pokemon from a different angle. This class is good. This class is good. Yeah, very good. Thank you. And all I'm doing is I'm just going to grab the front sprite and the back sprite. All right. Boop, boop, boop. That's why. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm going to go on this tangent because I have the floor. Y'all's, oh my God, I went grocery store shopping yesterday. I don't know why I said it that way. I was craving Sprite, so I bought some Sprite. I know now why. Oh, mystery solved. Sorry. Cool. Let's test, right? I can understand why some of you don't like me. All right, so I'm gonna console log. I'm gonna console log these things. Cool. So when I refresh. Why are they not console logging? Because they will only log in the submit action. I actually have to submit. So let me do this. Boop, boop, boop. Great, and that makes sense, right? Input 1, input 2, input 3. Do I actually want the inputs? But what do I really want? Right, so boop, dot value, and dot value, right? So now if I refresh, I have a name, nominee, and some front image URL and some junk. Cool. Great. So name, front image URL, and then some junk. Cool. So in fact, I'm getting the values correctly. And so as promised, I said I would explain why it's important to grab these input fields at a certain time. So if I move this code here and I grab the inputs first, let's think about how JavaScript will actually execute this code. It will run on 27. It will grab the values. And then on a submit, will console log the values that it grabbed. Let's take a look. Shoot. Oh, right. Let's do this. That'll be fine. Cool. If I were to put cool name, something, and nothing. That's weird. Nothing console logged. And I'll tell you exactly why. Because I grabbed the images basically on the page load. Right as the page loaded, it ran my JavaScript, it grabbed it, and then on submit, I console logged the values at the time I grabbed it. However, if I wait until the user submits, if I wait, grab me after the user clicks button, then I will have data so that console log has stuffs. So if I click this submit now, do the inputs have data? Yes. So if I click it now, what the? Oh, I didn't save. It doesn't matter when I kind of grab this. Dang, that's because we so dank. Cool. So here's it now. Oh, I blew that. So I'm waiting until after the user submits because at the time the user clicks, that's when I know there'll be data in there. So it's important when you can think about and consider when you're grabbing something. Does that make sense? I want to be clear, like where you write your code and when it executes is very important. Does everyone feel good about that? I feel good about it. And I don't see questions. So awesome. Great. Now that I have the inputs from the data, I actually need to finally send this data over to the server to be able to create this new Pokemon, right? So how do I send data to the server using asynchronous JavaScript? We'll send this fetch request, right? Boop, boop, boop. And this fetch request will go to this URL right here. Oop. Right now, it's set up so that it follows RESTful convention. What is the RESTful convention? What is the RESTful URL for a create action? Is it Pokemon/new? It's /Pokemon with a, there we go, that's it, with a method post. If you remember, the /new is actually a get. And what this does is it gives you the form. But we already have the form, so we don't need to do that, right? So I'm going to post to the RESTful route for the create action. Inside the create action, if you remember, sneak peek back to my good friend Rails. I'm going to receive some sort of params. And with those params, I'm going to do Pokemon.create with the Poke params. Do you remember this? And that's what's happening. So I'm going to do this post, right? Unfortunately, it's not that easy. Fetch MDN. Fetch is way more complicated when you're using it outside of the get. This is what your get request looks like, right? A little bit of a response JSON action. It's almost like I just literally copied and pasted it. But if, however, you would like to, say, post, there are plenty of things that you will need to sort of send over. And I'm going to break down each one of them. And that is this, right? Inside my fetch, which is being invoked, I need a URL. Do I have a URL? Check. Cool. And then I see this tiny little comma here, bloop, 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 to indicate that it is the next argument. So, bloop. And then it opens it up, and then it does this whole thing. So just for posterity's sake, I'm actually going to do the same thing. All right? I'm going to see comma, open this thing up, just like I see it right here. And then I'm going to do this. Bloop. Any questions so far? I'm going to get rid of, just line space this so it's a little bit easier to read. And I'm saying that it's going to be a method post. It looks like if I want any additional arguments, I need to separate that by commas. So this whole thing essentially is just one object, right? Comma. Trust me when I tell you that very often you will forget these, so I'm taking my time to explain them. And what is mode? Mode has something called CORS. CORS stands for cross-origin request. Resource sharing, sorry. Cross-origin resource sharing. There's so many acronyms. And you will learn more about this when I give you the Rails API next week, 2 weeks. All right? Just the idea that there's something about CORS, which is talking about cross-origin sharing. We know origins are like Mozilla, developer.mozilla, and origin could be localhost, it could be W3 schools. And so the idea is that, do you want your API to be accessible by any origin? If you don't, then you probably want to block CORS. But if you want it to be a free, public, open API, like New York City Public Data, then you probably want open CORS, right? We'll learn a little bit, just a tad, on like kind of how to understand and use this. We won't really get into caching. If you want to know about caching, we'll talk offline. Credentials has to do with literally credentials, and that is, we talked about auth in mod 2, and you can actually verify somebody's identity with something called a token, and that's going to be useful later. So headers, this is important. This is what headers does, and I'm going to explain this several times because this is very important. We actually need headers, so I'm going to put headers in here. Cool. Key value pairs, right? Semicolon. Headers itself, the value is an object. There's something called content type, and that is key value pairs with something called application JSON. Now, content type. This is going to be the type of data you are sending in your fetch. The type of data you're sending in your fetch. The type of data you're sending in your fetch. Your content type is the type of data you're sending in your fetch. Cool. Comma. If you forget or you're running into errors writing, watch how I'm literally pulling it from the docs, character for character. Alrighty? There's something else in here that they don't explain, and it's called accept. Accept or accepts? Accept. Yeah. And that's also going to be JSON. This right here, accept, is when the server sends you back a response. The server is going to send you back a response. What will you accept? What will you accept? The server sends you back a response. What will you accept? Content type is the type of data you're sending to the server. Cool? Great. Content type, comma, comma, and then it closes, then a comma. So it closes, then a comma. Because I'm going to put in another key value pair. So redirect, let's not worry about that. Refer, a lot of this has to do with like Google Analytics, or when you want to track someone, if you're like sending a response, you can kind of track and pass it down the rabbit hole about going to different redirects, and then ultimately like who sent you there. If it's like a spam website, then you can kind of track these things. But either way, body. Body is going to be your payload. What are you going to send back to the server? Body is the data you send back to the server. Body is the data you send back to the server. So naturally, I have something called json.stringify here. I need to stringify my data, and this is how it works. Right? If I have an object, right? Let h equal to some cool object, and that is be Hummy is best friends. Cool, great. I have h, right? H, I can json.stringify h, and I will simply get the entire object as a string. That's all it does. Turns this into a string. I need to do this because I cannot send a JavaScript object to my server. I need to send it in this language agnostic. I'm sorry. You can send it, but we're not going to send it as a JavaScript object. We're going to send it as a JSON object, right? Because we told the server the type of data we're going to send, which is going to be JavaScript. So I need to json.stringify some data. That's weird. It doesn't really help me here. But let's think through, right? I need to stringify something. Well, I need to send back the data to the server. So what is the server expecting as how the data will be organized? Remember, yeah, where it goes, right? Remember, in the def create method, right? It's going to do, what is this? What are we making? Oh, Pokemon. With sort of these strong params, right? And the strong param simply required each of these attributes and did permit true. What are the actual params that come through? Well, they come through as, if we really break them down, as a name, right? Like new Pokemon name, right? And then we also send them back as attribute with a value, and then attribute 2 as a value, right? This is just like all of the different values that come through on the param side of the house. So how does the Pokemon object actually want that data? Well, we can check by going to and physically seeing our data. It looks like there's some height. It looks like there's a name. What data are we sending to the server? What information did we pull? The name, the front sprite, and the back sprite. So I have a name here, and then I have some moves. I'm not sending any of this. So that means when I create it, those values are probably default to nil. Boom, 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 some stats, some types. Oh, there it is, sprites. So I have something called sprites. So what makes sense to me is that I have something called sprites, right? This, however, is its own object. So in here, should be some sort of object with a key of front, and that's going to be the real MVP, right? The real front URL data. I don't really need this right here. Boom. Also takes comma. Let's do this. Front, comma, right? Back, and this is going to be the back URL. So far, so good. This is how the server needs the data to create. So in the body, I'm going to stringify exactly what it wants, and that is the name, comma, the sprite. Sprites or sprites? Yeah, sprites. I'm actually just going to send it like this. Cool. And that takes in a object that needs front and back. What name do I want to give it? I want to give it the value that the user input. So poke name. And then the sprites for front and for back, which cool, is going to be poke front and poke back. Are there any questions as to how I was able to figure out how to send the payload?
So is this all defaulted for the GET request, or is it like abstracted because GET requests are so frequent?
None of this necessarily needs to be sent because you're not sending data back and the server isn't really giving you any data back. This only happens if you're actually sending data. So the GET request happens to just be really easy. Cool. Yeah.
So you have to, as a developer, have to write in the keys for what you want.
Yes. Right. What looks like something that I potentially can see as an abstraction is I can, and this again, write it this way first. Do not try to abstract it. Is I can have some function, right? That is like poke data, and then I can literally run this here. I can go, and then in the body I can call poke data. Does that make sense? Let's not do that though. Just showing you that it makes sense to refactor after you've written the code. Yeah.
You just put the keys in quotes, stringify when you do that automatically.
It'll stringify the whole thing, but it won't stringify individual things inside of it. And it makes sense because, right? Like if I had, I lost H, right? Dang it. Like if I had an array of like 1, 2, 3, I do not have to stringify 1, stringify 2, and 3. If I just stringify the whole thing, that's one string. Does that make sense? Like I don't need to go inside each one. I can just
Did it on concept that it stringify the key and the value?
say again.
Didn't it stringify the key and the value when we did it with the concept object?
Yeah, it did.
It did?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So there's like a whole string.
I think it just made it a string, to be honest. I mean, we could check it. But the point is, like, I'm running short on time. JSON.stringify will stringify the whole object. It will take the parts that it needs to stringify, and it will stringify them. All right? Cool. Are there any questions on how I was able to get this? Do you think this will be exactly the same in all your apps? No, this is the main part that really kind of changes. Right? So just for my own sanity's sake, what is content type? It is the type of data you are sending to the server. Cool, thanks. All right, great. Is this fetch being invoked? Yes, right? And again, the second bananas kind of close right here. Cool, so. Oop. 47. Did I lose? Am I in JavaScript hell?
You need another curl bracket after
47 says there's a problem. Anyone see this?
In a bracket before name.
I need a bracket before name. Yeah, I thought I had a bracket before name. Did I delete it? Oh, I deleted it. How did I delete that? It's okay, cool. Ugh, great. This closes, should close here, but it doesn't.
Closes now.
one before.
Where does this close?
So your hash that is the spreads one closes, but then there's
Yeah, right there.
inside that you need a curly.
Inside this, I need a curly. Oh, did I just lose the hash entirely?
Yeah, you might have to delete the other that bottom.
Now you have create, it's running that.
Oh, it's running this, thank you. Yeah, this is not like JavaScript, right? Oh, thank God, yeah. Powerful class, thank you. All right, so this will send off a fetch, right? This whole thing ends, you can literally follow this line right here. Cool? So let's take a look, right? Let's make a new Pokemon, right? And let's put this front image as like fronty front, and the back is backy back, right? Almost like marking, that's what it should be. Cool. If I create this Pokemon, should I see anything in the console? Interesting. Huh. That was weird. Nothing happened. Or did it? I don't know. Let's find out. Oh, dang it. Does it do to the front? Dang it. All right, let's see what happened here. Let's find out. Ready? Here, I'm just going to, at the end of the fetch, I can do what method? Yes, I can then it, right? And what is the response that I'm going to receive back from the server? What type of data will I get back from the server? I will get a response, right? So function, I can't wait till you get arrow functions. This will make my life so much easier. Oh, that's what happened. I deleted it already, almost. Almost. Cool. Right? And then all I'm going to do is return the response. .json. And then, cool, I'm going to get some sort of response again. And then I'm just going to console log the response. Nope, that's fine. That's actually expected behavior. Perfect. A, B, C. There it is. I got the response back. Do you know why this happens now? Because you specifically told the server, hey, I'm looking to accept JSON data, right? These things right here, I'm gonna go into a quick tangent because it's important, are known as Mime Types. So JSON is not the only thing that gets sent back and forth. There's something called MIME types, MDN. Mime Types, right? And that stands for multi-purpose internet mail extensions. This is way more to do than mail, but it's more about mail in the sense that you're sending and receiving something back. You can send plain text, right? Either CSS files, straight up HTML, regular plain text, JavaScript, you can send audio, you could send images, you can send video, you could send application, and right? So you can send anything you want. And what you want to put in here will change based on what it is that you want to send to the server, because this is what you're sending to the server, right? So you've been on a website where it's like, hey, upload a brand new image for your avatar. or like a new profile picture on Bookface, or like uploading something on Instagram, do you think the content type will be application JSON? Right, it'll probably be something like image JPEG or PNG. Also, it's smart. If you put JPEG and they upload a PNG, it'll probably figure it out. It'll just be like, you tried, and then it'll work, to be honest. Like, yeah. But you want to be as specific as you can, right? So, either way, does anyone have any questions on how I wrote the extra optional parameters for fetch? Kind of where they came from, what headers mean, and what body is, and how I formulated the body, why I have to JSON.stringify, why I then have to parse the response, and then actually see it. Cool. So let's take a look back at our code. Don't worry, I'm going to let you go soon. You can see the groans. Cool. I'll explain these errors in 2 seconds, right? Boop, boop. Right? Okay. And no. Right? If I create that Pokemon, it actually creates. Do I see that Pokemon here? I see Marky Mark and AAA, but do I see this new one? Boop, boop. No, because I didn't update the DOM. But on refresh, boop, boop is there. And so these errors basically are saying that file not found because I didn't really give it valid URLs. I put like some ridiculous data there. Does that make sense? So that's why this is expected behavior. Cool? So what I need to do now is I need to update the DOM. And there's 2 important things. I'll just be late to that meeting. All right, so you guys are more important. All right, so the truth is, right, I need to update the DOM. So when a user submits, right, a new thing with some like actual valid URL here and here, when I create that Pokemon, it actually wrote it to the database. This fetch will write to the database. I don't know why I didn't see it in here. Let's find it. Where is AAA? Interesting. Oh my God, it's a DB JSON. Great. And there it is. Cool. Actually, did I make 2 of them? All right, you know what? Where's Marky Mark? There should be 1. There it is. Fronty front, backy back, right? That's definitely the one we just made, right? It actually wrote to the database, but nothing happened on the front end. Nothing happened. So why is it that when I refresh, it's there? Because when I refresh, it will run this code again. And it will pull the new data from the server every time it's refreshed. But is that a good experience? Like if I have the user create something, it's like, great, if you want to see it, you please refresh. That's terrible. That's no good. So here I have 2 options. I can, well, let's break this down first. I have to, right? Update the DOM. So there are 3 things, right? The first thing is going to be updating the database, right? Did we do that? We did, right? Boop. Cool, right? This is done by the fetch, the getch. Very good. All right, then we have to update the DOM. Do we know how to do that? Right? Can we do that? Great. All we have to do is get the Pokemon container, I'm assuming, and simply what? We need to append, right? We need to add something to it, right? So there's some sort of append child happening here. Cool, right? That's one way to do it. How I've written my code is I have a method called showAllPokemon. If you remember what showAllPokemon does, is it will change the inner HTML, right? With Pokemons.map of all the Pokemons that I pass in, right? So I should probably be able to run something called showAllPokemon, right? Where is that function? I think it's called, yeah. ShowAllPokemon. Passing in, now where's my data? I need an array of all the Pokemons for this to work. Do I have access to something that has all of the data? And here I will explain. I'll explain something. Remember I told you on line 20, all Pokemons was an empty array. And then at the end of this code, the thens will fire. And then now, does all Pokemon have data in it? Yes. So let's think through this carefully. When the user has already had the DOM content loaded, puts in data inside the form and clicks submit. At this point on line 33, does all Pokemon have data in it? Yes, because the DOM content loaded, everything literally loads. All Pokemon now has data. So the user goes, great, let me make a new Pokemon. Let me make a front image, blah, 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 blah. And then I hit this back sprite button. So when the user clicks submit, at this point in time, this is when this code will fire. Does all Pokemon have data? Yes, because it got data once it hit here. At the end, once that script loaded, it got the data. So, all Pokemon in fact has data. So let's see if it will in fact update the DOM. All right, I'm gonna make some nonsense in here. Great, you could see that it made it, and then 1, 2, 3. Still 3 errors. Do I have them here? No, I don't. Because my all Pokemons array is stale. I have old data in here. The all Pokemons array never received this new Pokemon object. So we can change response to new Pokemon object, right? What I should do is I should probably all Pokemons dot push add in that brand new Pokemon that I made, so that when I render them now, it actually has that new one in it. Cool. Blah, 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 blah. Let's make something identifiable. Yep. Create that Pokemon. And there it is, identifiable. I'm updating it. So there's actually 3 things I need to update. I need to update the database, I need to update the DOM, and I need to update any local variables if I am using them. You do not have to use local variables, but if you choose to do so, you have to keep them updated. It's important to do that. That being said, if I did not use this, and instead I grabbed the Pokemon container and then I appended a child with, I don't know, this is not gonna work, it's not gonna work. Data from the new Pokemon object, right? This is not gonna work, not gonna work. If I chose to do it this way, direct DOM manipulation, did I use a local variable to re-render the DOM? No. So is it important to update my local variables for this render? It is not important to update the local variables for the render, but I should always update my local variables. I should still do this because it's important to keep all of your data synced up. Cool? So update the database, update the DOM, and then update local variables. Does everyone understand the 3 things you have to do? Check, hold. Sweet. So, does anyone understand or have any questions on this post? This is not going to work. Nope. Nope. Great. The last thing I want to talk about is something called optimistic and pessimistic rendering. it sounds like exactly what it is, right? Inside the fetch, when does the dot then execute? Before or after the fetch? The dot thens will literally wait until this fetch is done, right? So inside here, inside the fetch is then. Did the database get updated, yes or no? Yes, it did. So if I update the DOM after the database is updated, would you say you are trusting whether or not, can you guarantee whether or not the database was updated inside the .then? Can you guarantee whether or not the database was updated inside the .then? Yes, you can. It will either respond with a resolved, good to go, and then tell you it saved successfully, or it will be rejected, and then it will throw you some error and tell you, hey, I couldn't save. There's some like redirect, some server 500 error, blah, blah, blah. Either way, if I update the DOM inside the then, I am pessimistically rendering. What that means is I don't trust the database. When I send the fetch, I will wait until the response from the database before I update. I will wait until the response from the database to update. This is pessimistic. Does that make sense? If, however, I decided to, on the submit, literally at this point, here, outside fetch, and thens, and I updated the DOM, this is optimistic. Meaning, when the user submits, I know a fetch request is going to go to the server. I just believe it's going to work 100%. I'm going to update the DOM immediately. I can either have it here or here. Also optimistic. Why is it both? Well, because I'm not inside the then. Remember, the fetch returns a promise, and all of this will execute later. So this is still considered optimistic because the response from the database has not come back yet. So optimistic here, pessimistic inside the then. Are there any questions on optimistic rendering, pessimistic rendering?
Is there any reason to do optimistic rendering?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, yeah, absolutely. As you know, responses from the database, are they fast, efficient, and reliable in terms of speed? Right? The answer is no. Like, no, you have like no idea how long it's going to take. When you double tap on an Instagram photo, you're sending a request. You're literally increasing the likes that's attached to that photo. Do you want to wait for the user? Do you want to wait until the database is updated before the little heart icon comes up? That would be a terrible user experience, right? Imagine going, hey, wow, great photo of a beach, bloop, bloop. And then the heart came up. You'd be like, the frick? This is slow. This is 1 star, right? And so I would optimistically render something trivial like a like, because the bottom line is, at the end of the day, if that like failed to hit the server, am I gonna go back and check, like, hey, I liked that photo, I definitely liked it, and then like I saw the heart come up, and then it actually never hit the server? Like, you literally double tapped it while you're like in between train stations, so you lost reception, and then like the server request didn't go, but you saw the little heart. That's trivial. That is a better user experience to update optimistically. However, if I'm creating a user, like I'm Facebook, right? Not really, but let's say I'm Facebook, and a new user signs up. Do I want to update the DOM that says, congratulations, you just created an account, make friends? but it never really hit the database. Because guess what? I'm going to try to log in later and be like, your account doesn't exist. I might want to wait for something big and important like that to then pessimistically render and change the user experience to say, hey, you successfully created. So it will 100% depend on what you're trying to do. And the beauty of it is that you can combine them. You can combine them. Like you can render some stuff optimistically here, and then you can render the rest pessimistically. Cool? Are there any questions on optimistic versus pessimistic, the pros and cons, and when you would use them? Awesome, that's all I have for you today.